Hi, I'm Jack Baruzzini, and you're listening to The Secrets of Stargate, where I talk about the hidden meanings and deeper layers found in the Stargate movies, TV series, and more. And joining me today are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father.
Howdy, Jack.
And Lisa Jones. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Jack.
And Victor Lambs. Hey, Victor.
Hi, Jack.
Today we are discussing the 15th episode of Season 5, Summit. It's a gigantic Goa'uld get-together. Daniel Jackson is recruited on a mission by the Tok'ra to eliminate all the Goa'uld system lords in one fell swoop by releasing a newly developed aerosol poison during their meeting. Disguised as the system lord Yu's personal human slave, he is tasked to wait until all the system lords gather. But the plan is jeopardized when the Goa'uld I'm gonna trip over this name. Zapakana discovers the poison and attacks the Tok'ra's Stargate base, forcing SG-1 to evacuate. Meanwhile, the conference is delayed when Osiris, who now inhabits the body of Daniel's ex-girlfriend, Sarah Gardner, requests entry to the council, catching Daniel off guard. To be continued.
Dun, dun, dun.
Exactly. My favorite thing about this episode was just the cheese factor in it.
Yeah.
It was great. Just right from the beginning. The melodrama of the Goa'uld. What are your thoughts on this episode, Father?
Well, of course, Daniel Jackson, the one who's the moral conscience of the team, is the one who has to go wipe out the Goa'uld. And of course, that's not going to go wrong because it's Daniel Jackson and not, Jack O'Neill, who would have seen Osiris show up and like punching the button as quickly as he can to do it. Can we do it 3 times as quick now? No. This is actually a fine episode. This is the first part of 2-part, and it really sets up kind of the drama that gets concluded in the second part. It's a fine episode. SG-1 doesn't have a lot going on except they're dealing with the Tok'ra in the tunnels and stuff like that. But it's not bad. But of course, no one's gonna recognize Daniel Jackson except bum.
Yeah. I was about to say, shouldn't every system lord recognize, they should have pictures up?
Wanted?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel
exactly.
They would all know who the SG team was. Since they've been causing them so many problems.
And should mention, of course, we'll talk about this much more, but a very favorite bad guy just got introduced in this episode. So,
oh yeah, is it Baal?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, I liked the wide range of all the different cultures that the Goa'uld are pulling from. So it's fun to see that because initially it was just ancient Egypt, but they've brought in the Greeks and looks like you've got some Vikings and like African deities and stuff.
Various Celts, yeah.
Yeah, it's cool that they just came in and just took all the humans' cultures and ran with them. Something that is nice though is that they didn't try to do Yahweh as a Goa'uld.
No,
for obvious reasons that
they skirt that line when we get to the Ori, but they stay well enough away from it. So.
That's good. Yeah. And I feel like that's something that would probably be done nowadays, but in the early 2000s, late 90s, that was probably still too touchy of a thing to try to lampoon that way.
Well, Phil Vischer on VeggieTales even had a rule that was Jesus would never be portrayed as by a vegetable. As they were doing their Bible stories and stuff. So that was a hard and fast rule that he had for VeggieTales as well.
That's good.
Yeah.
Although I remember as kids, we extrapolated from all the VeggieTales Bible stories and wondered, how would you crucify a vegetable with no arms? This was our 7-year-old. You can cut this if you want. Our 7-year-old brains. But
and you can listen to the secrets of VeggieTales. No, we don't have that. We probably won't.
Anyways, what are your thoughts on this episode, Lisa?
I like this one. It's very classic SG-1. It's you got all of the season. I would say the best of season 3 and 4, where you have the over the top Goa'ulds with all the cheesy costumes and arrogance, and they just bombard you with that. And then on top of that, you got the Tok'ra, which we've loved to hate on for a couple of seasons now. for obvious reasons. You get Jaffa, you get there's fighting, there's spaceships. I mean, I feel like it's like they put like everything they've been holding out on season 5 with us, they just stuck it all in 1 plus 2 episodes. And so for that reason, it's just kind of fun. It's very much plot driven. Like this sets up so much of next season that I don't know. It's almost like nostalgia since we haven't had so much of the fun, cheesy Gould for a while.
Well, and don't forget, you got the Martooth Sam ship by extension too.
That's
so
right.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We've got to bring all of that psychological drama for Sam back up in the whole that like the Jolinar and her loves Martooth, who's now dead but his memories are held on in a symbiote that's in stasis. Yeah.
And then the symbiote ends up in Lieutenant Elliot, who we saw in a proving ground. So
in somebody else. So it's
weird.
Very SG-1.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of season 5. I know I mentioned this on a previous episode, but it almost started reminding me of the X-Files because it was focused very much on the government espionage and the NID and keeping the secrets from the public, and a lot of like down to earth, literally based plots. And so it's nice to get like just go full space opera.
Well, it is kind of funny where we commented on, one episode where you see they completely use the Death Glider scenes from the first Children of the Gods.
Yeah.
Because they were saving money for these 2 episodes. For this episode and the next episode we'll talk about in the next podcast episode. But it's like they saved all the money for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
They just go all out. And the CGI at this point has gotten really good. Like all the space shots are awesome.
Yeah.
Again, for 2001, which is when this came out, I mean, it's really good. 2001, that era. This is they've really improved the CGI for television CGI. Absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Victor?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think this and the next episode, it doesn't really feel like they had enough for 2 full episodes. It's kind of, in my mind, kind of like a 1.25 part episode. But this first episode is really good. You could kind of tell when they're doing like the previously on Stargate, and they're covering like so much ground. They're covering like the Riol, the shape shifting, or the, not, they don't shape shift, but the psychologically adaptive aliens, a lot about the Tok'ra, the Gould, setting up that there's a new Gould. And even before the credits roll, we don't see any SG-1. We just see Osiris and Zipkata talking about, we say like, his name is Anubis. And so we learn like the name of the new big bad. And so it's very rare that we would have like a pre-credit sequence with no members of SG-1 in it. Just these 2 up till this point, minor characters. So, and then it starts off and it moves very quickly. We're in the SGC, Daniel's debating whether or not he wants to, release a biological weapon on the Gould. And he says, no, I'm going to do it. And then they, then they're in the Tok'ra base, then they're in the shuttle, then they're in Yu's house. And then, they're on the space station, which is a really cool, Gould looking space station. And then they just kind of get stuck there, walking in and out of this meeting room for the next episode and a half. And talking on CB radios or something. It's a lot of like Daniel sneaks out. And I'm like, gosh, these slaves have a lot of alone time if he could just like sneak out and talk to Jacob, on his little radio whenever he wants to. But yeah, and then obviously we talked about how the Gould attack the Tok'ra base, and there's lots of excitement there and stuff. So
I think they're slaves in kind of like the old world, like Roman sense, where like Roman senators would have like their trusted slave who they didn't get paid and they were loyal to their master, but they were more like their like secretary / housekeeper / bodyguard, like all rolled into one. So I think that's definitely what they were going for.
They still have a lot of personal time though, even for like a modern like day chiefs of staff. Like they wouldn't have that much time alone. It'd be like, bring me more tea. I need you by here in case I need more tea or in case.
Yeah.
So.
And this is a situation of slavery, not like we're familiar with here in the United States. And you hear of slavery back in the 1700s, 1800s. This is very different from that. This is more of the slave was as much a part of your home as your family was, is more what this is. Now, pile on that the Goa'uld, who they don't have family and their home is themselves. But if you had a trusted slave, you would really trust them. You knew they were your major domos, another term you might use for this. So, yeah. So for a slave to be able to go away from his master and, do things like, say, radio into the Tok'ra, that wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, you as an ancient Gould, so maybe he just needs a lot of time in the sarcophagus or sleeping or something.
Yeah. And we've heard before that Yu is very partial to humanity. He's the one who really helped humans advance when he was, in charge on Earth and stuff. So, and it's and the way the vote goes and stuff later on, it's kind of telling too. So
he's the most benevolent, malevolent Gould.
Yeah.
He actually is. That's the funny part. He actually is.
Yeah.
Of the bad guys, he's the good guy of the bad guys.
There you go.
But yeah, going back to the whole plan, I mean, you can hand wave it because it's TV, but sending Daniel in looking like Daniel, like they don't even try to disguise him or put like a mustache on him or anything. It's just
well, they used the Lieutenant Tyler poison to disguise him as the actual chief slave of Yu,
Jaren.
And
Jaren.
It just, and it's like, who are you? Stab. Oh yes, of course you are my chief slave. Give me some tea. Okay.
Well, we saw how well it worked with Lieutenant Tyler, right? They all swore up and down he existed. So,
yeah. And I have questions about how that real poison works too. Did they program it so like anybody who gets jabbed with it thinks he looks like Jaren, or just thinks he looks like someone?
So,
or it's like power of suggestion, right? Like you stab them and it makes them.
Yeah,
you just
whatever
say
you
something.
say next. Yeah.
Like
I think that's more likely. I think that's more likely, as we see in the second part, that it works on people that wouldn't know who Jaren was. So I think that's more likely. It was more suggestion of, oh yes, Master Yu, I am your servant Jaren. Yes, of course you are. Pour me some tea. That kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Who's
that
Jaren?
makes me wonder.
Like, that's what he says. Like what?
That makes me wonder though. What happens if you poke someone with it and then tell them that you're them? Does it cause them to have like an existential meltdown or something? Yeah, because they'll really believe it.
He could have said I'm you, right? So
I just love that it was a needle sticking out of a ring. And he's like, of course, Jacob is like, don't stab yourself. And I'm thinking, well, if you turn it in, because he kept turning it in, right? You're going to stab yourself. If you turn it out, you're going to catch it on something. I don't know.
Well, they show it where the ring is like, doesn't have the pointy thing out until he stabs too. So it's not like
maybe it's like
always
pressure
there.
Activated.
Yeah.
Just reminded me of the Gom Jabbar from Dune.
Oh, I was thinking of the blood test things, like when you take your blood test where it pokes you.
Oh,
it's like it doesn't stick out until you push down and then it snaps. Maybe that's what the ring is.
Well, and then Jacob's like, don't stab yourself. And I'm like thinking, this is Daniel Jackson. Like he's going to...
Well, now I'm going to stab myself because
I'm going to play with it. Yeah.
Well, and I do like Jacob's answer. And he's like, why? And Jacob's like, actually, I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
Just
can't
but you can tell it's like, they're like, oh, we need Daniel to go to in the writer's room. We need Daniel to go to a symposium of the Goa'uld. And it's like, well, won't at least one of them recognize him? It's like, oh yeah, well, what have we got? Oh, we got the real poison or something. So I like how they make that callback. So if you solve that problem,
if you poke yourself and whoever speaks to you next says you're a chicken, are you going to start doing the chicken dance?
Oh, maybe that was it. Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot more they could have done with the real poison than they did.
Yeah.
Like, why not just pump that into the conference room and then tell them they're all like snails or something?
I'm just glad they brought back some. We have all this technology and cool stuff that we never see again. So it was kind of like, It was nice to see them bring it back and say, "Oh yeah, I remember this."
And
There
it
you
might have
go.
been something where there still need to be that physical contact, because that was the issue in the original episode. Was
Yeah.
They were touched by this alien, and that chemical was put on them, and that's how they
And
got
even
absorbed.
Frasier, remember, she touched the jacket through the plastic and
Yeah.
got it.
True.
So there needed to be that physical contact. It couldn't be airborne.
Yeah. I just love that it was Jacob Carter that shows up, but he's like, "This is what's happening." And then, O'Neill's like, "I think there's something you're not telling us."
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then Jacob's like, yeah, we're going to wipe out the Goa'uld. So now's the time to do it. We're going to do it with a chemical weapon.
Mhm.
What I did like about that scene with Jacob and Jack was it was a callback to, the episode at the beginning of the season where they have their, where they have their Goa'uld mothership. And they're walking through the corridors and they're, discussing, and Jack's taking issue with the Tok'ra and Jacob's trying to explain it. And they're just walking down and it's like a single take of them walking through the corridors. We get that only in the Tok'ra tunnels. Now we get the two of them walking with a lot of stuff happening in the background and debating the ethics of the plan, or, how well it's going to work and stuff. And then I do like when Jack takes a wrong turn down the tunnel and then has to turn and come, and Jacob just doesn't stop talking. He's just walking still towards the camera talking, and Jack has to
I
run
have
and
a
catch
feeling that was Richard Dean Anderson just
Probably.
wanting to throw something in there just because.
Yeah.
Yeah, seems like the kind of thing he would do.
Mhm.
Now we should have mentioned the important part is we do have a red shirt. Lieutenant
yeah.
Elliot gets his first mission. Now he's
Oh,
lieutenant.
yeah.
He's actually been promoted already. That's pretty quick. I thought usually took a little longer than that. But no, actually lieutenant right out of academy. But he gets his first mission and he's the red shirt.
Yep.
But
Well,
doesn't he survive longer than anyone else on his team?
he does. Well,
Pretty
we'll talk
much.
about that. Yeah.
We'll talk about the second episode,
Yeah.
but yes,
The
he does,
ambiguity.
more or less.
But yeah, no, and so yeah, it's his first mission. He's excited to explore the Tok'ra base. He's kind of into like when they're talking about all the different tunnel crystals and stuff, and he invites Jack to stay and listen to the lecture. And
That
Jack
was
doesn't
actually
want to,
funny
yeah.
where
Yeah.
Jack's like,
It was.
really exciting, isn't it? And of course, he's totally sarcastic. And Lieutenant Elliot is, oh, this is great. This
Yeah,
works
just
this way.
yeah,
This
pick
is
up on it.
awesome. He's like literally taking notes.
And then Jack's like, "I gotta go wait with Teal'c while we wait."
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's kind of like the I got to go to do the thing at the place with the
Mhm.
people. You understand?
Yeah.
yeah.
Or women say, like, "I gotta wash my hair." Like, no.
Yeah.
How many times do they need to wash their hair?
That's right.
Yeah.
I loved his enthusiasm, though. That was fun to see. I mean,
Yeah.
it's sad based on what happens later on, but
Well,
Just how
we'll discuss
excited he
this. I have
was.
my own theories, but yeah,
yeah.
Uh-oh.
Stay tuned for next
We'll
week.
touch on that.
yeah.
Next week.
Yeah, and we get introduced to Baal, and I like his goatee. Got that going.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strong vibes of like Aries from Hercules, the legendary journeys. You have an Australian or an actor playing a evil god wearing a goatee.
So I guess he would be like, I mean, Baal was a god in a bunch of different cultures, but kind of like, was he Babylonian originally?
Yeah.
I honestly don't.
Yep.
Okay.
In the show, definitely. I think they've mentioned him. Have they mentioned him before?
No, they
Not
haven't
at
mentioned.
this
Okay.
point. Mm.
Maybe
Okay.
in passing once, but
They
of
said
course,
his
in the
name,
real world,
yeah.
Yeah.
Baal was a Babylonian god that the Israelites kept getting tempted by because he was the big god of the area that they were in. But yeah, this character that's just been introduced is one that we will see him many times again, and he actually does become a fan favorite because the actor is one of those that just plays him so
Right.
well.
But he's bad.
Oh yeah, he is bad.
He
yeah, he's
never
not-
don't get your hopes up that he's going to become like the next.
He's not.
you.
No, he's
No.
the bad guy that's loved.
Yes.
He's not the bad guy that reformed.
No,
Right.
he does some pretty bad
Nice.
things.
So he's like Gould Dukat a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is
actually,
kind of,
that's a good comparison. That's a very good comparison with similar characters where they're still bad guys. They're sympathetic bad guys,
Mhm.
but they're bad guys.
Nice.
That's not that. This isn't Wreck-It Ralph where you're a bad guy, but you're not a bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be good to see a Gould with a bit more depth than some of the previous ones have had.
Yeah.
I don't know that he necessarily has more depth. I don't.
Maybe not depth.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
He gets more depth. I mean, he gets, like I said, he gets to be a little bit more sympathetic. That doesn't mean we
more dynamic
like him.
than
More
there you
dynamic.
go.
That's a good word.
That's a better way to put it.
Yeah.
more dynamic than Morgan's outfit. I don't. Yeah,
maybe. Who knows?
maybe, yeah.
So, I'm not a fan of the I guess it's Australian accent through the Gould voice changer. It just sounds weird with Osiris.
Yeah,
Well, that's her native accent though.
Right.
She's from
Yeah, it just
and Louise Sloman is from Australia originally, but
right. It just I don't know.
I don't know. I've always liked the Australian accent, so
I think it's just the Gould layer on top that ruins it for me.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's
that's
what we have
the
with the head Tok'ra lady, who doesn't stick around very long, so I didn't write her name down. So
Renal.
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
Renal, yeah,
Renal.
Renal.
Well, she sticks around through the first episode at least.
Yeah.
yeah.
And she's kind of she's like the third or fourth woman who liaisons with SGC that we've had so far at the Tok'ra.
But she seemed less head counsel and more scientific. I'm the one creating this poison or researching it.
And I'm going to actually give you the information you need to do the mission.
Yeah.
Did she though?
Somewhat.
Yeah. Well,
Osiris was kind of a twist in the plot that you can't blame on them. So,
but they gave Daniel Jackson a vial of it, but they didn't actually give him any. Like they weren't handing Carter here's the
chemical makeup
to make it. Yeah.
Well, they did at the end. Yeah.
Right.
It's a data disc. Yeah.
Necessity.
When they're
Actually, they didn't. Carter took it.
Oh, that's right. She did. Yeah.
Well,
she took it
moving
under
on to the
duress.
Next one.
Yeah.
We're trying not to cut into the next episode because this is a two-parter that really fits together well.
Yeah. It's so confusing.
Right into it.
Yeah. But yeah, so Carter does get into it with Renault or whatever about Martouf's brain.
Yep.
But it's kind of that scene doesn't really resolve itself. Yeah, it's like, where's Martouf? It's like, oh, well, we dissected his brain because we wanted to learn more about Zaytark detectors and or Zaytarks. And they're like, well, you didn't have to dissect his brain. They're like, yeah, we did, but we got Lantash out, and so there's this big hullabaloo over whether or not they actually care about the host or not.
Right? Could you've saved the host?
And this is just kind of, I feel like, been telegraphed by the Tok'ra and the Goa'uld, is that the symbiote is really the one in charge, and the Tok'ra are nicer to their hosts, but they're still the one who lets the host talk. It's like they got the upper hand in that relationship.
That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think there really is a sense that the symbiote was kind of the leading group, because the symbiote was older, had more knowledge. I mean, and I think that's the thing with the Tok'ra, is it really is more of, you take charge because you know more what's going on, and you've got more experience. The funny part is, I was thinking as we're talking about this is, having the memories of the previous host, and that sounds a lot like the Trill from Star Trek. We're, take your drink because we're bringing up Star Trek again, but it really does. It does sound a lot like the Trill, but with the difference though that they can switch between the host and the symbiote. Yeah, and the symbiote does take the lead in a lot of cases, but only because the symbiote knows. But then again, we see with Jacob and his symbiote, that it's a lot of time it is Jacob talking, but with the knowledge of the symbiote. So that kind of plays in there too, where Renal will be talking, but it's with the knowledge of the symbiote. Jacob will be talking, but with the knowledge of his symbiote. So, and
I think we just get Jacob this entire episode.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think we hear from Selmac.
No.
With Renal, we get almost all the Goa'uld, the symbiote, and only once do we hear from the human host.
Yeah,
and
in this case, it's Renal is the symbiote. and we don't know the name of the host.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've often compared the Gould to evil Trill, but with the Trill they're more integrated. The Gould, it's more you can flip a switch, and I guess there is kind of a cross pollination of knowledge. So,
and of course, we see that with other cases with other hosts that have been released from their symbiote, so that they know the knowledge that the symbiote had.
So what did y'all think about Jacob's explanation of the poison is going to kill the Gould, but then it'll also kill the host, right? And Jacob's like, you're doing them a favor.
Yeah, because they would be the human host is probably hundreds, if not thousands of years old.
Yep.
And has been revived with the sarcophagus. And so when the Goa'uld dies, either the host would just die right away, or it would, like we saw with Apophis, it would like age rapidly into like a mummy.
Yeah.
But
that's what I was thinking of too, was Apophis, where, the host within, a couple of hours went from, 30s age, looking like he's in his 30s to ancient, like immediately.
Like 300s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I can say like the Indiana Jones scene at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But, taking it from a morality perspective, I mean, you're talking about the individual who is taken over by the host, and then, they're arguing, at this time it's only about the Goa'uld, that's arguing that it's a better perspective just to kill the host versus let them, die. But then it gets expounded to the Jaffa.
Well, of course, the Jaffa is a whole nother question there.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at Skara, where he was under the control of the host for only a couple of years, and what he had seen, and he talked about that he had to face.
Yeah.
Versus again, someone who has been under the control of a Goa'uld for decades, if not centuries, and the stuff that they had seen, and having to live with, assuming that they could remove the host, kill the host kill the symbiote without hurting the host. The host is still going to have to live with those memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. It gets really dark when you think about the whole like psychology of the Goa'uld. Like, it's kind of like the ultimate violation, having your body completely possessed and used it like a meat puppet for thousands of years, and you can just watch. Like, that's really horrifying when you think about it.
Yep.
I guess, I'm not sure about the morality of it. I don't know if the principle of double effect would apply there. Like, you are targeting the Goa'uld and you foresee that the hosts will die.
Yeah. I would definitely say that's a double effect, because it is a poison that only affects Goa'uld, so it only affects the symbiote, but the symbiote in the process of dying is going to poison its host. And even if it doesn't, again, the idea that the host will age to where it should be at that point, that's not the intention, and Jacob makes that clear. That's not the intention to kill the host. It's just going to happen. And the same thing with the Jaffa. It's not the intention to kill the Jaffa. It's the intention to kill the symbiote that they eventually need to survive. But of course, and later on that they close that loophole.
Yeah.
Right.
They close that issue very quickly with something that the Jaffa can survive without the host, or without the symbiote, excuse me.
It is interesting they bring it up here, that we're talking about, I think that a lot of people, you think, okay, we're going to kill the Goa'uld and the host will die. Okay. I think that's kind of okay to get behind in a way, but then when you talk about killing the Jaffa, who had no say in the matter, this is their life. It's and I love the way Stargate kind of skirts it and then backs up and like, okay, we're not gonna tackle that right now. Never mind.
Yeah.
But they bring it up and it makes you think about it, and you're like, ooh, that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was just worried that if Daniel does use the poison, and like some of it's on his clothes, and then he like beams back over to Selmac's, Jacob Selmac's thing. So like, do they have that like goo that they use on Enterprise to decontaminate you?
I don't need the mental image of Selma, of Jacob, Daniel,
Ew.
having to do the goo
Applying
thing.
goo to each other.
No.
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah. Well, because I was just worried that like, he'd bring it back and then like someone would be like, "Great job on your mission," and die because
then
it
you
was
have to do
one
it
of
with
his
the
colors or
this is
something.
where Daniel starts getting a little bit more buff, so maybe people would want to see that,
Yeah.
that kind of disinfectant scene. No, that's later season that he gets much more of that.
He just beams back, and Jacob has a N95 mask on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I guess another thing, and I don't like with the Jaffa, it's sort of analogous to just in combat generally. Like if there's a draft in a war, like how many of those people really want to be there, or they just have to be there, and
Mhm.
that just gets into the whole morality of just war in general. And is it okay to
Exactly.
use chemical weapons? Like I know there's a big taboo against chemical weapons, at least right now culturally, and I think a lot of that just has to do with how horrible World War I is. But when you really get down to it, is using that worse than just planting a bomb?
I will say that, I mean, I'm not an expert on like Geneva Convention and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, that is the kind of the secular version of just war that we operate under in theory. And I'm going to leave it at it in theory because there's a lot of debate
Yeah.
whether or not wars that we have fought in recent memory has been just wars. And that has been a very serious concern in the church because of the weapons we have now. But as far as chemical weapons, I think it's been pretty well understood because of how indiscriminate they are.
Mhm.
If you spray chemical weapons like mustard gas or a biological weapon in a war zone and there are innocent civilians, you can't stop that from spreading onto them.
Mhm.
If the wind blows from the front lines into a town and that mustard gas blows into town, you can't stop it from killing civilians. And that's the biggest concern.
And they had that, They even had that happen in the trenches.
Yep.
In World War I, they'd blow it and the wind would change and it'd come right back on your soldiers. So
It'd
you
come
can't
back
even
on
control
them.
it.
You would have the non-combatants behind the lines who are like chaplains and medical officials and people like that who were affected by it. So it's such an indiscriminate, cruel weapon. It's one thing, you fire a bullet that will affect one person. You fire a chemical weapon that could affect upwards of hundreds of people. And so that's why things like Geneva Convention and of course why things like nuclear weapons and stuff like that are such big concerns. There are no ways to really control them in a way that can only affect that soldier that's right in front of you.
Right.
And so, and of course, getting into just war theory that, you've got combatants and non-combatants and things like that. Those who are, you have to restrict your warfare to the actual people who are fighting the war. And that's why there's, again, concern with wars today, whether or not they really have ever been just wars in recent history. Because of all that, that's stuff that between, studying the theology of just war and studying things like how you do warfare, it really is major concern. So it's understandable where, like, is this chemical something that can be controlled? Is this chemical that's something that can only affect those who are combatants as we understand it, and so on. So yeah, it's legitimate arguments. It really is.
Yeah. And you kind of I feel like you get a little bit of that in this episode where the issue of morality comes into play, but at the same time, this is the only effective way you can actually do this. And so at what point are you like, I'm not going to do this because it's immoral, but there is no other way to do it. So you get a lot of that there. And I like that they touch on that. I feel like that's something they could delve into more, but you got 45 minutes. So how much can you do?
This isn't the last Gould killing super weapon we run into anyway. So it comes back up. It comes back.
This
around.
argument comes up back, and that was a nice thing. When we talked to Joseph Malazzi a couple of weeks ago, where he brought up we had some of these moral issues that we wanted to talk about, and we were able to, and they were able to do that. And Stargate SG-1 and Atlantis, and even Stargate Universe talked about a lot of these kind of moral issues. So that's one thing that makes them great is they're not afraid to shy away from it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So episode kind of, I like how we get the end with Osiris. She's got her dagger at Daniel. We cut to black, and that's his whole thing. Where originally he was on board with the mission, but once Osiris is there, he does not want to kill Sarah. So that throws a wrench in the works for him.
Once again, his lover, his wannabe lover, or his girlfriend or wife is there, and all of a sudden his morality changes.
Which they had to anticipate. You're setting Daniel into this, right?
Yeah.
You had to anticipate. With him, when does it ever go just exactly right? Like, there's always something that comes up. So I don't know. I love that scene where Jacob's like, it has to be a human, or it has to be someone who understands fluent Gould, right? And then they look at, I think they looked at Teal'c, and then they're like, no, it has to be, it was just perfect, because it's like, what, me, huh?
Yeah. And everybody's like, well, it has to be human. And so, of course, everybody's kind of looking around, and it has to be someone who is fluent. Teal'c's like, well, I can't go because I'm Jaffa.
Yeah. Well, and you notice Daniel doesn't have any qualms originally. He's just like, okay, I got it. And he's got the picture. They pan his desk, and he's got the picture of Sharae.
Yeah, that was a nice touch.
That was a nice touch to have her.
And they did kind of play it where he was questioning. Mm-hmm. And they actually, and I think they did that on purpose to show that he was questioning whether or not to do this. But then there was a conversation between him and Teal'c, and he says, and that's why I'm decided to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's no other option. This is what we got to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way that they costumed Osiris. I loved it.
Yeah.
I thought, you got all I'll just say the weird female costumes going on in this episode for the Gould. You got, we're not gonna talk about that. Like, there's some weirdness, and then you've got her, and I just love the way she comes in with all of the confidence and arrogance and authority, and the way she perches on the edge of her seat, and her, I don't even know what that is, like gold thing, and I don't know. I thought she looked fabulous. I loved it.
It actually looked a little bit more contemporary. Relatively speaking, because again, all the other ones are dressed like different ancient cultures.
Yeah,
you is dressed like an ancient Asian culture, and all these other ones, and she looks, more contemporary. I'm not a fashion expert, so I can't say if it would have been, but it looked at least more contemporary than.
I think she reminded me of a Barbie doll I had in the late 70s. I'm just gonna say, like Disco Barbie. I don't know.
So more contemporary.
With like gold lame. I don't know. I loved it.
Yeah, I like that they didn't go with the very like stereotypical kind of ancient Egyptian look that we've gotten previously with the Egyptian-based Gould. So that was fun.
Maybe because she's Osiris, which is an Egyptian god, but it's more of a traditionally male Egyptian god, right?
Yeah.
And they touched on that.
Male.
Yeah, and it's a female with a male Egyptian god, and so I don't know. Maybe they just saw that as a hey, let's just dress her in something cool.
She should have dressed more butch then, like with overalls. And,
well, they did bring that up where it's just you usually pick male. Why this female? And it's just kind of like I didn't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. She was the one that was available.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about that scene for a second because y'all just reminded me of that. Like, was that not just the most awkward? He's like in her face. Okay, I'm a girl, y'all are not, but like he's in her face and he's just, I don't know, he's so awkward and so uncomfortable. And
he's totally hitting on her.
He's just a weird dude.
It was weird.
Zepacana, though, is just, he's a good actor. The guy who plays him is a great actor, but the character is so strange, over the top. Again, a Gould.
He fit the Gould, but she just did a good job of like, whatever, dude, I'm here for the power and step back, but like,
Well, and when he was talking about, I'm not here to compete with you. I want something more from you. And it's like, is he seriously going to say, like, even though you're normally a guy, I want you to be my queen type of thing?
Yeah. That was the vibe. Yeah. Yeah. It was weird. I didn't like it.
This is what people with MLMs, those multi-level marketing things. That's just how they talk. It's like, hey, I think you'd be really great for this thing I got going on at my house. You're like, oh, really? Yeah.
Let me tell you about Pampered Chef. I just ticked off our Pampered Chef fans, but
he plays like the conniving, creepy sleazeball really well.
Mhm.
yes, he does.
Yes, he did. He excelled at that.
But then,
Yeah.
of course, he becomes, kind of a badass character bombing the planet. I mean, so
Yeah.
there is that. He
Yeah.
got the Tok'ra on the run. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He's more than just a creepy face, I guess. You
Yeah.
could.
And that's a great place to end.
Awesome. Did you have any other thoughts on this episode?
Now, of course, they had to do they come up with this great wonder poison that takes weeks to recreate.
Oh, of course.
This little vial was all
synthesize,
they
yeah.
had,
Of course.
and it takes weeks. It's not something like they can punch a couple of buttons and poof, there it is.
Yep.
Yeah. They're like, Jacob took all that we have. Yeah.
Yeah.
This
They
whole
don't have, like, one of those
4
soda
ounces of
machines you
each,
just-
Oh, yeah, with the different flavors.
Yeah. And you just hold down the 2 flavors and it creates the Gould toxin there.
They only made enough for this one thing, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Awesome. Well, before we go, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secret to Stargate, including Charles M., Les, Barbara L., Irving N., and Jacob J. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secret to Stargate and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give and be sure to follow all the shows in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or on the SQPN YouTube channel. To find previous episodes of Secret to Stargate and to send feedback, please visit sqpn.com/stargate. You can email us at stargate@sqpn.com or follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/starquestmedia or on Twitter at SQPN. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next episode of SG-1, Last Stand. Until then, Father Cory, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secret to Stargate.
Thank you, Jack.
And Lisa Jones, thank you as well.
Thanks, Jack.
And Victor Lambs, thank you too.
Thanks, Jack. It's always suicide mission this, save the planet that. Nobody stops by just to say hi anymore.
So sad. Such a loss. Once again, I'm Jack Baruzzini. Thank you for listening to The Secret to Stargate on StarQuest.
Anyway, I'm sorry, but that just happens to be how I feel about it. What do you think?